Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if smart Naruto became a legend loved by Haku, Tenten, Fu and Samui, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Silence engulfed the room as Naruto showed no outward reaction to the shocking revelation. Shikamaru had his head down on the table, waiting for Naruto's words to break the quietness. Shino had initially showed a reaction to the discovery but he schooled his face back to normal. The blonde boy stared at the picture so intensely, it was as if he was trying to burn it with his eyes. What was he supposed to say after discovering the fact that his idol was actually his father? This woman is my mother and the Yondaime is my father. Makoto-san said that my mother had red hair, which this person has. How do I know Shika knows what he's talking about? Naruto shook his head free of those thoughts. Of course he knows what he's talking about. Why did my dad seal the Kyuubi within me? Did he hate me for some reason? Gigi told me that he loved me but what am I supposed to believe? Naruto. I said Naruto. The Jinchuriki was broke from his stupor and looked towards Shikamaru, who had called his name. Do you want to talk about it? The Nara boy asked. Naruto was unsure of what to do. He obviously trusted his friends. The trust had strengthened further when they accepted that he was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. I'll go grab some tea, you want some Shino? Shikamaru got a nod from the Kikaichu user and left the room. Naruto collapsed onto the tatami floor. Many things had occurred in such a short span. The Uchiha massacre, the Kyuubi secret and now the discovery of his parents' identities. Shikamaru came back a minute later, carrying a tray with 3 teacups on it. Each boy took a sip from their cups and instantly relaxed. Thank you for finding out for me, Shikamaru. Hokage Gigi told me that he would tell me their identities when I became a Chunin. I understand why now since they probably made tons of enemies that would do anything just to kill me but I'm honestly glad that I was able to find out sooner. Naruto's words came out smoothly as a small smile plastered onto his face. What do you plan to do with this information, Naruto? Would you ask for your inheritance or choose to remain silent? Shino asked his friend. I honestly didn't even think about my inheritance until you mentioned it. I think I'll keep silent because I know I'm not strong enough to handle most of my parents' enemies. To get to me, they would target my closest people. There's no way they're going to attack the Hokage, so that means you too. Naruto explained, pointing to his friends. Troublesome. The Nara voiced his displeasure. Naruto and Shino laughed at Shikamaru. Instantly the pineapple-headed boy and the whiskered boy stared at the other boy in the room. Oh Kami, the world's going to end. Shino openly laughed at something. Naruto thought. Noticing the stares, Shino instantly returned to stoic face and stood up. He glared at them from behind his sunglasses. That doesn't leave this room, ever. Do you two understand? Shikamaru and Naruto caught the subtly threat that hanged in the air. Well, you're right about one thing. No information is going to leave this room. Shikamaru said to ease the tension. They all nodded and left the room as if sensitive information wasn't discussed. Shino returned home for dinner while Naruto was forcibly told to stay for dinner by Yoshino. 2 months later, Naruto ducked and weaved through buildings while trying to escape his pursuer. The blonde hid in the shadows and pressed his body up against a wall. Quickly catching his breath, he tried to think of an escape plan but his thought process was interrupted. A kunai grazed his cheek and his assailant was situated directly above him. The boy fled the scene without looking back. He needed to get to the Hokage Tower as that was one of his safe havens. He ran into the crowd and quickly used henge to change into a civilian. He casually walked, blending in with the villagers. Naruto headed straight towards Training Ground 7, hoping to shake off his enemy by going an alternative route. As he passed the grounds, ninja wire surrounded him and a disguised Naruto was tied up. "Got you, Gaki," the assailant declared. A devilish smile was on his captor's face as she walked towards him. Her outfit did little to hide her modesty from the world. She wore a scantily attire that consisted of a mesh bodysuit and an orange skirt. A tan overcoat was worn loosely over her mesh suit. Her purple hair was styled similar to Shikamaru's. "You almost had me. Too bad I'm too awesome to fall for your tricks. Your posture was more of a shinobi's than a civilian's." Naruto cursed his fate as the captor put him over their shoulder and used Shunshin to appear in the T&I building. He was dragged into a dimly lit room that was commonly used for torture. The blonde was placed on a chair and across from him sat two pissed-off men. "Good job on catching Naruto. He's known to be able to escape from even Anbu." Inoichi congratulated the snake mistress on a job well done. Unlike what he wore to the birthday party, Inoichi wore his Jonin attire. "Like he can escape from me after what he did." Mitarashi Anko smirked. "Uzumaki." A deep voice that belonged to Morino Ibiki got the blonde's attention. The chief of the T&I division's black jacket came into view. His blue bandana covered his scarred head from the world. "What were you thinking when you decided to replace our tools with non-harmful versions?" Ibiki glared at the boy. Naruto had decided to prank the place where criminals were regularly interrogated. It took him an entire week to prepare the tools necessary to accomplish the prank. "Am I going to be punished?" Naruto asked innocently. It had been quite some time since he was last punished for his pranks. "As long as you tell me what I want to know, there won't be any punishments," Ibiki said before leaning forward. "If you refuse to answer my questions, I'll make sure I'm the one in charge of your punishment," the scarred man threatened. Naruto immediately nodded, clearly getting the message. "How were you able to get into this building and replace our tools undetected?" Inoichi asked the question. "I used henge to change into you, Inoichi-san. I then went around talking about Ino with all of your coworkers. Ino told me that's what you usually do at work besides interrogating," the blonde boy replied. Inoichi looked away in shame, avoiding Ibiki's and Anko's gazes. Naruto continued his explanation. "I left the building after remembering the layout and where the tools were kept. I brought lots of clay and molded the clay to have the exact same weight and shape as your tools. I painted the clay with a silver color and glazed it over to give it a metallic shine. I snuck back in as one of your coworkers who had, conveniently, gotten sick with a stomach ache that day. I stole your tools and replaced them with my clay ones before leaving. I got caught by this lady a couple of hours later," the Jinchuriki explained. "Also, I should remind you that you weren't allowed to take me in since you have no evidence to use against me. If I didn't confess to my prank, then you guys would be explaining to the Hokage why you unlawfully captured and interrogated a civilian." The boy boldly told them. "Why do you believe we didn't find evidence?" Inoichi asked since it was true that they didn't find any evidence. "Easy. You didn't call Anbu to bring me in," Naruto replied with a smirk. The three interrogators had a huge headache thanks to the little blonde. No wonder no one attempted to capture him if they were even able to find him. "Anko, untie him so we can get our tools back," Ibiki ordered as he rubbed his temples to soothe the pain of being outsmarted by a 10-year-old. "No need for that. Nawanuke no Jutsu, rope escape technique." Naruto escaped from his bindings and pulled out a scroll. From the scroll, several instruments commonly used by interrogators came out. "Gaki, you were able to escape this whole time?" Anko asked, bewildered by the kid in front of her. "Of course. You aren't the first person who had managed to tie me up. I just wanted to see what it would be like to get interrogated by professionals. Naruto answered while explaining his reason. Inoichi could clearly see that Naruto's thought process was completely different from a normal 10-year-old. Hey, you never did tell me what happened when you used the clay to injure your so-called victims. Anko decided to answer this question. I was scaring the wits out of this guy and he was just about to spill. I grabbed a senbon, intending to stab him in the knee. Instead of drawing blood, the senbon bent from contact. Both the guy and I stared at each other before we started laughing. He laughed. I laughed. I then knocked him out with a punch to the gut and began hearing that everyone else was having the exact same problem. She recapped what happened earlier today. Naruto busted out laughing at their predicament. If there's one thing that we can get out of this, is that we can now psychologically scare our prisoners since they won't be able to tell the difference between the real and fake tools. Ibiki grinned manically for seeing the silver lining in this event. Inoichi and Naruto sweat dropped at Ibiki's happiness. Man, you guys really know how to scare people. Naruto commented as an idea popped into his head. Do you think I can help interrogate someone? Inoichi was flabbergasted at Naruto's question. Why do you want to interrogate someone, if I may ask? The blonde man inquired, not liking the fact that his daughter's friend wanted to interrogate a person. Naruto smirked before pulling out a scroll that contained the book, Shinobi Basics 101. This book says that a shinobi must always control their emotions out in the field. If you let your emotions get to you, you're more likely to make mistakes. I figured that if I was able to manipulate my opponent's emotions, then I'll have a better chance of winning. Anko and Ibiki smiled at his logic. The ability to get under someone's skin was quite useful. An enemy could get caught up in your words, actions, or even clothing. That was why Anko dressed so scandalously and teased people. Ibiki had a hardened gaze along with an imposing build that deterred enemies. Sorry Gaki, but you have to be a part of the division to actually interrogate someone. Anko replied as she killed Naruto's chances with that. Do you happen to have any books or scrolls regarding the subject? Naruto asked since he wasn't going to interrogate anyone anytime soon. I actually think you have the right mindset regarding controlling your emotions, but I don't think you should try to manipulate your opponent's emotions. If you accidentally misjudge how a person is going to react, then that can mean your death. I have seen people taunt their opponent, only to be dead when their opponent went off in rage. Inoichi reasoned with the fellow blonde. What Inoichi says is right. You should spend your time observing your opponent instead. Information is very vital to a shinobi due to the fact that any piece of information can save you from death. Of course, not all information is correct, so you'll have to determine which one's real or fake. For example, when you look at me, what kind of fighter do you see? Ibiki asked Naruto. To me, you're mainly a ninjutsu expert that also excels in taijutsu. Naruto answered after looking at Ibiki. Ibiki smirked at the answer. I'm actually a genjutsu expert that excels in ninjutsu. The imposing man replied. Naruto was perplexed because Ibiki didn't seem the type to use genjutsu. Ibiki saw that Naruto was slightly confused. That information is false. I simply wanted to see your reaction. I'm really a shinobi that excels in shurikenjutsu, genjutsu, and ninjutsu, but I'm not an expert in any field. Naruto was dumbfounded that he was tricked so easily. This time, Anko decided to chime into the conversation. As Ibiki said, information to a shinobi is very vital. The only way to counter that information is deception. Deception is the key to luring your opponent into a trap and tends to be more effective than taunting. As a prankster, you know about deception since you used a henge to blend into the crowd. You took another route, knowing that I can't stop you if you're at the Hokage Tower. She informed. Naruto realized he was using deception without realizing it and how effective it was. So you're saying that if I look weaker, my opponents are bound to underestimate me. Since they underestimate me, it gives me multiple chances to deal a fatal strike. The boy summarized. Since you're a Gaki, people are bound to underestimate you. Not to mention the fact that you look so freaking innocent. Anko commented as she pulled on Naruto's cheeks. The blonde boy pouted, which made Anko comment on cute he looked. Thank you for the lesson Ibiki-san, Inoichi-san, and Crazy Lady. You helped me learn an important lesson today. Since you helped me, I promise that I won't prank T&I headquarters again, Datbeo. Inoichi and Ibiki sighed in relief while Anko was saddened. Ah, that means I can't chase you around town anymore. The purple-haired woman frowned. Oh well, I can always go play with the prisoners and my name is Anko, not Crazy Lady. Naruto snorted at her. Fine Crazy Lady, I'll try not to call you Crazy Lady. He sarcastically replied. Anko pulled out a kunai, which prompted Naruto to bolt the hell out of there. Wait Gaki, who told you that you can leave? Come back here. Anko shouted as she gave chase, leaving the two male interrogators by themselves. I feel sorry for Naruto, Anko finally found someone to play with. Inoichi said while Ibiki agreed on the sentiment. 3 weeks later, Yugao was heading to Dangoya to meet up with her friends. The Anbu Kunoichi was enjoying a rare day off from duty. Usually she would spend it with her boyfriend, Hayate, but he was away on a mission. This led to her having a rare girls' day with her friends. As she entered the dango shop, her eyes spotted a patch of yellow hair. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? She asked the boy that had become like a little brother to her. It had been almost 3 months since Naruto came under the tutelage of Hayate. Hayate taught the blonde a version of the Konoha Ryu leaf style that relied on Naruto's stealth ability and mastery of the Kawarimi no Jutsu, Henge no Jutsu, and Kakurimi no Jutsu cloak of invisibility technique. The original Konoha Ryu used distractions and illusions to overwhelm the opponent. Naruto's version attacked the opponent's blind spots from various directions before hiding again. The boy had promptly called his sword style, Kgi Ryu, Shadow Quick Draw Style. Yugao thought the name was fitting, considering that most of the attacks were those of the quick draw variety. While Naruto was learning the style rapidly, the sword style had a major flaw. As the objective was to hit and run before the opponent could counterattack, fighting in an open area with no places to hide proved to be a weakness. A straight-up fight wasn't ideal for someone of Naruto's skill set. Luckily Hayate had devised a way to avoid such a situation. Her boyfriend worked on his pupil's speed, acceleration, and ability to quickly draw out the wakizashi. Speed was primarily used to catch up to or flee from the opponent. Acceleration was for when Naruto was ready to attack and needed to close the distance. Drawing out the wakizashi was used when an enemy was able to catch him off guard or to attack swiftly. If he was able to draw his blade fast enough, the blonde would be able to defend or attack. Yugao would sometimes come by and help with the blonde's training. The Anbu woman told him about her and Hayate's past. She had gotten together with the sickly man due to the fact that she needed to know how to use a sword in order to enlist in Anbu. The Sandame had recommended Hayate as her instructor. Over time, they got closer and started dating each other. Since she saw Naruto almost weekly, they developed a sibling relationship. For Yugao, it was easy to see the young Jinchuriki as a younger sibling since she was tasked to watch over him when he was little. The same was for Naruto as he also treated her like a big sister. It had gotten to the point where the purple-haired woman would scold Hayate for overworking her little brother. Of course Naruto came to his sensei's defense every time since he wanted Hayate to push him harder. Hey Yugao-ne. Naruto greeted her. I'm taking a break from my studies. What are you doing here? Is it another date with Hayate-sensei? Naruto asked the Anbu woman. Yugao, I'm over here. A feminine voice called out to the purple-haired woman. The cat Anbu grabbed her little brother and dragged him to the booth where the voice originated. Kurenai, meet my little brother Uzumaki Naruto. Yugao introduced the Chunin to Naruto. The boy tried to escape from his sister's hold as he left his dango behind where he sat. Unfortunately she was stronger than him so he relented. The blonde turned to meet the red eyes of the raven-haired woman sitting across from them. Hello Uzumaki-san, I'm Yuahi Kurenai. I'm a friend of Yugao's. Kurenai introduced herself. She wore a unique outfit that seemed to be bandages that had a pattern of thorns on them. Underneath she wore a red mesh blouse with the right sleeve visible. The genjutsu user wondered why the name Naruto sounded familiar. She also recalled that Yugao didn't have any siblings. Nice to meet you, Kurenai-san. You can call me Naruto, if you wish. I don't particularly care about honorifics. The Jinchuriki replied. Now if you'll excuse me, I'll like to go back to eating my food. Which I was doing before someone dragged me away. He looked at Yugao, who seemed amused at his words. As he was about to get up, a certain someone walked into the establishment. Hey Kur-chan. Anko shouted as she spotted Kurenai. Shit, why in the heck is she here? Naruto cursed as he began panicking. The snake user walked over to the table. Who are you talk? Anko stopped in the middle of her sentence as soon as she saw her favorite Gaki. I've found you, Gaki. The interrogator woman loudly announced, disturbing the patrons. You can never escape from the great Anko-sama. As Anko was prepared to leap at him, Naruto knew he had to resort to his newest jutsu. Yugao-ne, this crazy snake lady has been stalking me all over town. Every time I run away, she would throw kunais at me. If one of them managed to nick me, she'll appear behind me and lick my blood. Naruto whimpered out the words as he hugged Yugao. In addition to the kunais, Anko would chase him with snakes as well. This promoted her from crazy lady to crazy snake lady. I didn't. The Tokubetsu Jonin was about to deny the claims when Naruto cut in. The boy activate his newest jutsu, Koinu no Mi no Jutsu, puppy eyes technique. Turning his gaze up to meet the Anbu woman's eyes, he spoke in a scared voice. I'm scared Yugao-ne, can you protect me? Naruto sniveled, tugging at the woman's heartstrings. Yugao melted instantly from her little brother's actions. She placed him behind her and patted his blonde hair as reassurance. An instant later, Yugao's katana was firmly pressed against Anko's neck. Anko, you have until the count of 5 to explain why you assaulted my cute little brother. The Anbu woman said as she leaked a small killing intent. Everyone gawked at the Kenjutsu user's words. Even Naruto couldn't believe that Yugao thought he was sexually assaulted by Anko. Somehow in his protective older sister's mind, she had twisted his words. 1. Yugao started the countdown. Listen Yugao. First off, I didn't sexually assault Gaki here. Second, the reason I was chasing him was because he pranked our department. I was the one tasked to bring him in. Anko explained rapidly. Yugao's blade slackened at her words, much to the relief of the snake user. The blonde boy wasn't going to have that, so he pressed his advantage once more. But Yugao-ne, I already went and apologized for the prank. When I was leaving, she started to chase after me for no reason. Ever since, she's been following me around. Naruto whined to Yugao, but he was snickering inwardly. Anko couldn't believe it. The Gaki's freaking acting, but no one else knows that. You win this round, but I'm definitely going to get you back this. The Tokubetsu Jonin thought. Before Yugao can press the fellow purple-haired female for answers, the earth underneath them shook furiously. What in the world was that? Anko audibly voiced everyone's thoughts. An Anbu came out of nowhere and approached Naruto. Uzumaki-san, the Hokage requests your immediate assistance. It's of the utmost importance. The operative told the boy. Worried about his grandfather figure, Naruto dashed out of the restaurant and towards the Hokage tower. So you're on Naruto duty today, Lynx. Yugao spoke to the brown-haired Anbu with the lynx mask. I'm wondering why you're still here when Naruto has already left. Her eyes narrowed at Lynx, causing him to flinch. The lynx operative used Shunshin to flee from her wrath. As the Anbu left, everyone went back to their activities. The purple-haired Anbu walked back to the booth where her friends were sitting. Why do you have Anbu watching over your little brother? Kurenai asked as she wondered if Yuga ordered her subordinates to keep watch over Naruto. The Genjutsu mistress wouldn't put it past the Anbu captain considering how protective she was with him in the debacle with Anko earlier. It was originally a volunteer duty because of his status. Yugao whispered to the raven-haired woman. Kurenai was confused at Yugao's words when it clicked in her. Naruto was the name of the boy that contained the Kyuubi. I didn't even recognize him since he wasn't wearing that orange monstrosity. The Chunin confessed. Yugao stuck her tongue out in disgust as she remembered the horrible thing. He lost that thing over a year ago. Where have you been? The Anbu woman inquired. Anko snickered at Yugao's disbelief. The snake lady had just returned after retrieving a plate of dango. Don't blame Kur-chan. She has to keep up the persona of Ice Queen of Konoha, so she typically ignores everything. Anko explained. Her snickering turned into laughter. Kurenai groaned at the title. I hate that name. I don't understand why people call me that. I'm a nice person and I don't ignore everything. The Ice Queen denied. Anko held up 3 fingers at Kurenai. 1. You've rejected every invitation that asked for a date. 2. You glare at anyone who does anything remotely perverted. 3. You never smile when you're out in the town. The Tokubetsu Jonin put down a finger with every reason. Kurenai fumed at her reasoning. It's not my fault that all men are perverts that just want to into my pants. I hate perverts, she retorted. Many men around the elemental nation sneezed at the comment. Anyway, we're getting off track. The Chunin turned to Yugao. You said that it was a volunteer duty. Does that mean it isn't anymore? Kurenai wanted to know why a kid had someone watching his every move even if he was special. Yugao let out a sigh as she explained. When he was younger, he was constantly pranking people around the village, but someone was always able to catch him. That all changed when he threw away his orange jumpsuit and wore shinobi clothing. Ever since then, he has been virtually undetectable and began pulling pranks without ever getting caught. To make matters worse, whenever he pulled a prank, there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. Without evidence, he couldn't be accused of any accusations. The people in Anbu, me included, didn't believe that he was untraceable. We believed that the Chunin and Jonin were getting lax or that everything was just a baseless rumor. That was until he pranked the Anbu headquarters. She said as the other 2 women gasped. Kurenai couldn't believe Yugao's story. The Anbu headquarters is supposed to have the tightest defense in all of Konoha. It's impossible to get in and out without someone knowing. Not to mention the fact that other than Anbu, no one knows where it's located. Kurenai stated. Despite several years of service as a Konoha kunoichi, she hadn't the slightest of an idea where Anbu HQ was located. It was impossible, but Naruto managed to found it. For his prank, he poured itch powder on our Anbu and training clothes. For good measure, he added itch powder to the detergent in case we tried to wash the itch powder out. Our masks were hidden in different areas, and when we found the mask, it was usually trapped. Some had bright-colored paint sprayed all over them with glitter sprinkled in, while others had syrup dumped on them and were covered with feathers. When we told Hokage-sama, he simply chuckled at our misfortune. In the end, we were punished for allowing a single civilian to come in and out of headquarters without being detected. Every Anbu was given gate duty for 24 hours without pay. Azumo and Katetsu were quite happy to be relieved of their duties. After that fiasco, the volunteer duty became a mandatory duty for all members. Despite someone constantly keeping an eye on him, he always seemed to be able to slip away. Yugao finished as she remembered the wretched gate duty. Kurenai was unsure of what to say. And this kid, that was able to hide from highly trained Anbu, is somehow still an academy student. The Genjutsu mistress questioned. He's currently in the bottom 4 of his graduating class. Yugao told them nonchalantly. This shocked Kurenai and Anko, who almost choked on a piece of dango. How's that possible? I expected him to be near the top of the class. Anko commented after drinking some sake to soothe the pain of almost choking to death. Yugao smirked at the girl's reactions. He was actually in the middle of his class before he suddenly plummeted. When I asked him the reason, he told me, before you can fool your enemies, you must be able to fool your allies. Anko grinned brightly. The great Mitarashi Anko, taught him that deception was vital to a ninja, and he obviously took it to heart. She boasted while puffing out her chest proudly, ignoring the fact both Ibiki and Inoichi also advised the boy. Disregarding Anko, Yugao continued to explain why Naruto hadn't graduated yet to Kurenai. Naruto has Anbu-level stealth, trapping, and possibly espionage skills. His high level of intelligence and creativity makes him a tricky opponent. His stamina or chakra level is that of a low chunin, but I expect him to have jonin levels when he graduates. Naruto has a great mastery over the Kawarimi no Jutsu, Henge no Jutsu, Kakurimi no Jutsu, and Nawanuke no Jutsu. He's able to use the last 3 without hand addition. He's a level 2 Fuinjutsu user and will most likely be level 3 in a few months. Yugao informed. Those skills alone makes him worthy enough to be a genin. I still don't see why he hasn't graduated early. Kurenai commented, but the purple-haired Anbu shook her head. That's where the praise ends. His other physical abilities, besides stamina, are still that of an academy student. Years of nutrition deficiency doesn't correct itself that quickly, even with his condition. His genjutsu and taijutsu are non-existent at the moment. Naruto has only recently started kenjutsu training with Hayate and sometimes me. He also isn't able to perform the Bunshin no Jutsu, which is one of the requirements needed to pass the genin exams. Yugao wrapped up her in-depth analysis of her little brother. I felt like I was the Hokage for a moment, with the way you reported Naruto's abilities. Kurenai laughed softly before pondered on something Yugao had said. Do you think the reason he can't do the Bunshin no Jutsu is because of his condition? It only requires a small amount of chakra after all. The Genjutsu mistress wondered. Yugao sighed in her seat. Hayate and I deduced that as well when we started training him. We told him there were elemental Bunshin that he can learn, but he refused. The Kenjutsu user informed. This time Anko spoke up, choosing to enjoy her dango rather than converse. Why did the Gaki refuse? If I was him, I would have pounced on the idea of learning elemental Bunshins. Especially if it allows me to avoid failing. The snake user reasoned. Yugao's expression turned solemn. The reason is because of a promise with his former teacher. He promised her that he would master lower-ranked jutsus before going for higher-ranked jutsus. Naruto told me that he would rather use a low-ranked jutsu at full power than a high-ranked jutsu at half the power. Yugao said, recalling the conversation that she had with Naruto. Kurenai could see the reasoning behind it, but he was doing more harm than good. Anko frowned at the former teacher part since it reminded her of a certain snake. Who was his former teacher? She must have been someone incredible for him to respect her so much. The genjutsu mistress inquired. It was the late Makoto-sama. Yugao replied as she began wondering if she had the right to talk about Naruto's past with her friends. Sure, they had gotten close in the past few weeks, but he told her his past in confidence. Kurenai was shocked and easily saw why the blonde persisted with the Bunshin no Jutsu. If Naruto gave up, it would be like breaking one of the few bonds he had left of her. The booth was silent even though the rest of the store was loud and rowdy. Please don't tell this to anyone. I shouldn't have told you without asking Naruto for permission. Yugao pleaded to her friends. They nodded at the request. If it helps, why not tell him to make as much Bunshin as possible instead of the required 3? It should be easier since he won't be limiting the amount of chakra he uses. Kurenai suggested. Yugao nodded and said that she'll tell Naruto the next time she saw him. The 3 ladies continued to talk about different topics well into the night. With Naruto when he left Dangoya. As Naruto arrived at the Hokage Tower, he was greeted with craters on the floors and walls. The Anbu were on the floor knocked out while the secretary was shriveling behind her chair. He raced past her, hoping his grandfather was safe from whomever that attacked. The boy busted the door open to see Jiraiya and Hiruzen, holding down a blonde lady. A black-haired lady holding a pig was off to the side, away from the men. Hokage-sama, are you alright? Naruto asked even though he could see the situation was under control. Oh yes, I'm fine Naruto-kun. Please come in and close the door. The Hokage smiled at Naruto's formal way of addressing him. The blonde boy did as told and watched as the 2 men slowly got off the blonde woman. Upon release, she gingerly stood up and looked into the direction of Naruto. Her blonde hair was tied loosely into 2 ponytails while her forehead had a unique diamond-shaped mark. Both her gray kimono and the green haori, which she wore over the kimono, was in a disheveled state as she walked to the fellow blonde. Naruto's eyes were drawn to the blue gem necklace around the woman's neck. Looking up at her eyes, he saw a mixture of emotion swirling in them. But the most prominent was that of remembrance. Have I seen this woman before? Only Gigi gives me that look when I visit, like he's seeing someone else in me. Naruto mused before recalling his parents. She must have knew my parents. He concluded. Naruto, I want you to listen to me. Hiruzen spoke, drawing the boy's attention away from the woman. The person in front of you is Tsunade of the Sannin and also your godmother. Before you get mad at her, she didn't know that you existed until today. Jiraiya and I hid the truth from her because she wasn't in the right mindset to care for you. Hiruzen explained while nursing the bruises he got from his female student. You didn't know I existed? Naruto asked calmly. Tsunade shook her head no. You were presumed dead along with your parents. I figured that you died since my sensei would have told me if you were alive. At least I thought he would have told me. She scoffed out the last sentence. His godmother sat down on the floor in front of him. Anyways, I should introduce myself. My name is Senju Tsunade, one of the 3 legendary Sannin and the last of the Senju clan. I'm known as the best medic in the world. She said, hoping to give a good impression. Haim is also known as the legendary sucker, as she's the worst gambler in the world. Jiraiya butted in. Nobody asked you. Tsunade rebuked her teammate. Clearing her throat, she turned back to her grandson. Now tell me a little about yourself. Naruto sat down on the floor as well. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, the village pariah and one of the few Uzumaki in the world. My dreams are to one day become Hokage and to keep all of my promises. In my spare time, I like to pull pranks, train, and read books. Naruto started out softly but grew louder as he finished. A second later, the black-haired lady sat down next to them. Hello Naruto-kun, my name is Shizune and this here is Tenten. Shizune introduced herself. She was wearing a long bluish-black kimono that was held together by a white sash. Tenten had a dark red jacket and a necklace of pearls. Boohee! Tenten called happily as she stepped to Naruto. The blonde boy petted the pink pig, earning another boohee. I hope I didn't interrupt. I wanted to introduce myself since I'm Tsunade-sama's apprentice. The black-haired medic Nin apologized. It's okay Shizune-san. I was wondering who you were. Naruto admitted. Please don't call me San, it makes me feel older than I actually am. Shizune sighed as she told the blonde. What shall I call you then? Naruto asked, which made Shizune put a finger to her chin in thought. How about Shizune Nichan? I've always wanted a little brother. Shizune remarked. Naruto's smile increased. Hi Shizune Nichan, what should I call you godmother? He said while addressing Tsunade. How about calling me Tsunade-chan? She suggested, which made Naruto look at her weird. He remembered reading that she was Jiraiya's teammate. Aren't you as old as Jiraiya? He inquired, adding a tick mark to Tsunade's forehead. How come you look so pretty? Naruto asked, unknowingly saving himself from pain. Tsunade smiled warmly at the younger blonde's question. What you see is an advanced form of Henge no Jutsu along with a small Genjutsu. Tsunade explained. Naruto wanted to learn the technique as well but remembered that he had no experience with Genjutsu. Plus he still needed to find a way to perform the Bunshin no Jutsu. Can't I just call you Tsunade Bachin since it's easier for me? He questioned. The question earned him a light punch to his head from Tsunade. She nodded, nonetheless, to appease her godson. The three continued to chat, ignoring the two men in the room. Looks like we're being ignored sensei. Jiraiya voiced to his sensei. Hiruzen smiled at the scene in his office. It's fine, I like seeing them like this. The Sandaime replied. Jiraiya wished that he was a part of the group but he knew that Naruto didn't forgive him yet. Did you hear his introduction as one of the last Uzumaki? Hiruzen whispered to his student. Do you think he knows about his heritage? Nah, he probably read about his clan in some history book. Jiraiya presumed, which the Hokage nodded. Sorry to interrupt Naruto-kun but can you take Shizune on a tour around the village? It's been quite some time since she's been in the village. I also need to talk to Tsunade about something. Hiruzen asked the young Jinchuriki. Naruto noticed that it must have been important so he got up to leave with the black-haired medic. He was stopped when Tsunade hugged him. He looks like a mini Minato but he seems to have the personalities of both his parents. Tsunade thought as a few tears developed. She quickly wiped them away. He hugged Tsunade back before waving his goodbyes, leaving with Shizune and Tenten. As soon as they left, Hiruzen ordered an Anbu to take his comrades to the hospital. I really don't want to talk to you right now sensei. I'm tired and need some rest. Tsunade complained to the Sandaime. Tsunade, I need you to stay because it's of utmost importance. I wouldn't have called you back like this if it wasn't. I also intend to keep my promise regarding the medical program and your debts. However, that talk is for another day. Hiruzen replied, summoning another Anbu. Summon Dog and Lynx to my office immediately and I want the entryway to be cleaned up. He ordered. The Anbu nodded before leaving to perform his duties. A few seconds later, Dog and Lynx appeared in the room. You called Hokage-sama? The Anbu with gravity-bending silver hair asked. Hiruzen nodded to Dog and then to Jiraiya. The Toad Sage surveyed the room before activating his privacy seals. The reason I called all of you is because my spies en route has informed me that Danzo is meeting with Orochimaru early tomorrow in his underground base. The Sandaime informed. Shock could be seen on Jiraiya's and Tsunade's faces. Dog and Lynx were also surprised at the news, but their masks covered their expressions. Sensei, do you know why they're meeting up? Jiraiya asked before curiosity getting the better of him. More importantly, how were you able to get a spy en route? Danzo has everybody in his control because of the cursed seal on their tongues. If anyone with the seal tried to reveal Root's secrets or Danzo's involvement, they would die. The Toad Sage inquired. Jiraiya tried to find a way to negate the seal, but the men died before he had the time to study the seal. Hiruzen chuckled at his student's confusion. You're correct that a person with the seal cannot say anything, but what if someone was capable of transferring his mind into a body without the seal? The Hokage asked. Sudden realization struck the people in the room. Of course, a Yamanaka would be able to divulge the information to you while also being able to spy on Danzo. The Seal Master said in disbelief. Jiraiya couldn't believe he didn't realize such a simple bypass. Regardless, the reason that they're meeting up is unknown at the moment. The reason I called each of you here is because we're to kill Danzo and Orochimaru for treason. I'll handle Danzo while Jiraiya will take on Orochimaru. Lynx, you will lead us to the base and direct us to Danzo. You'll then pair up with Dog to take down any Root members. I would have liked for you to spare them since they're simply following orders, but I know that they would come at you with the intent to kill. Retaliate in kind and make sure to flee if you're being overwhelmed. My spies will help when they see the opportunity. Tsunade, you'll stay here and get the hospital ready for us. During that time, you'll also be serving acting Hokage. Should something happen to me, you'll be my successor. Hiruzen explained his plan to the group. Tsunade wasn't happy with the plan. Why am I staying behind while you go off to battle? Sensei, I'm not a little girl that needs to be protected, I'm one of the Sannin. She said defiantly. Tsunade didn't like the idea of them going in without a medic. Tsunade, while you're correct in saying you're a Sannin, how long has it been since you actually fought? Her sensei questioned. Forget fighting, how long has it been since you've trained? As a medic, you know that sense is dull when not actively used. I've been training rigorously for over 3 months to get back in fighting shape, and I know Danzo has always remained in shape even after the war. Orochimaru and Jiraiya constantly hone their bodies during their travels around the elemental nations. Let us not forget that you've developed a fear of blood since the end of the war. The Sandame said, watching her winch. As much of a help you can be, you can quickly become a liability the minute you catch sight of blood. You might think I'm being cruel to you, but you must face the facts. I want to correct my mistakes while not making any new ones. I'm not going to my death. I still have to see my grandsons become shinobi before I can happily pass away. Hiruzen smiled kindly, which instantly relaxed the people in the room. All right, sensei. I understand your reasoning. Tsunade yielded. While she was unhappy, the blonde medic understood that she was a potential liability out in the field. I want you guys to come back safe. As long as you come back, then I'll do whatever it takes to heal you. The medic assured. The men was grateful that the world's best medic was at their service. Make sure you come back, sensei. I don't want to be stuck as Hokage. Tsunade said bitterly. Hiruzen nodded, knowing that she was still haunted by the demons of her past. Get your supplies ready and meet up at my estate in exactly 1 hour. We'll plan out our attack and rest before heading off to Root headquarters. Hiruzen ordered. The men did exactly as told and quickly left to pack their gear. The fight would be extremely difficult even with the element of surprise. Now Hiruzen simply had to wait for the day to end. When the next day arrived, he would make sure to his former rival. Next day, early morning hours. 4 figures made their way towards Training Ground 44, or by its more popular name, Forest of Death. Everyone was in their typical battle outfits while Hiruzen had on his old shinobi outfit. Lynx led them to one of the many entrances into Route. Lynx removed the genjutsu that covered the ground to reveal a metal latch. Jiraiya checked for any seals while Dog checked for traps. After disabling all they could find, the group made their way into the headquarters and navigated through the tunnels. They arrived to a clearing where Shimura Danzo stood. What a surprise to see the Hokage here. How are you on this fair night, Hiruzen? Danzo asked but was frowning that his rival was in his secret base. The root leader had wrappings covering his right eye and parts of his shaggy black hair. The man had on a white tunic underneath his black robe. No wonder the snake left so quickly. Shimura Danzo, based on reports of child kidnapping and associating with a known traitor, you're hereby sentenced to death. This sentence will be effective immediately. The Sandaime cut the chatter as he got into his battle stance. Suddenly 100 root Anbu erupted from the shadows and surrounded the intruders. Deal with the tagalongs. I'll personally deal with Hiruzen. Danzo ordered. Jiraiya go after Orochimaru. The rest of you stick to the plan. Hiruzen ordered his men as well. Dog and Lynx dashed back to the entrance to get to another clearing while Jiraiya pursued after Orochimaru. The Toad Sage vanished before the Root Anbu were able to intervene. The members went after Dog and Lynx, leaving the two war veterans alone. Dog and Lynx vs 100 Root Anbu. Dog and Lynx raced back to the entrance and activated the exploding tags that they placed as they fled. Bombs went off and the tunnel collapsed onto itself. Every root member survived and quickly surrounded the two intruders. Mokuten. Ki-Ida no Jutsu, would release. Tree limb technique. Lynx sprouted tree limbs, hoping to capture or impale the root members. 25 members fired off a specific fire jutsu. Kaden. Enden fire release, fireball. They shouted together. The jutsus merged together, forming one huge fireball. The fireball turned the wood into ash and continued to head towards Lynx. Sweden. Sujinheki, water release, water encampment wall. Dog announced as soon as he was near Lynx. Dog's jutsu surrounded the duo and was barely able to withstand the attack. They heard a roar and turned around to see a Doryuden, earth dragon projectile, coming at them. Dog and Lynx was able to successfully dodge the attacks. They were entirely on the defensive and the enemy wasn't letting up. Raiden. Jabaki, lightning release, electromagnetic murder. The root Anbu fired. Bolts of electricity came from every direction and neither Konoha Anbu had enough time to form seals for a jutsu. Mushi Kame no Jutsu, insect jar technique. A stoic voice called out. Insects surrounded the two Konoha Anbu and protected them from harm. After the technique died down, two young root members stood next to Dog and Lynx. It took you too long enough. Dog said rather lazily, even though he was still surrounded. It was rather difficult to apply my Rinkaichu while everyone was moving around. However, you were able to buy enough time for me to infect everyone. A boy with the stoic voice replied to Dog. As if puppets with its strings cut, the other members of Root fell to the floor in agony. Many bodies twitched before finally succumbing to the poison. The young Root members took off their masks to reveal Yamanaka Fu and Aburame Torun. Torun fell down to one knee from chakra exhaustion. When the Hokage told us about the spies, I never expected you to be so young. Lynx voiced his opinion. When we were asked to join Root by Danzo's request, the Hokage gave us an espionage mission to discreetly spy on Danzo. Our abilities made it easy to access Root's secrets. Fu explained. Torun stood upright and steadied his breathing. Even the most secure places have insects within them. That includes Root headquarters as well. I am able to talk to other insects, which allowed me to spy on Danzo even though I am not a senior member. Fu would then proceed to enter my mind with his clan techniques. When we went on missions, Fu would go into the mind of a random civilian and relay the information to Hokage-sama. Good job you two, but you have new orders from Hokage-sama. You'll lead me to where the kidnapped kids are located. You'll then flee with them and be treated at the hospital. This was originally Lynx's orders, but that changed when we collapsed the tunnel. Lynx, go assist Hokage-sama immediately. Dog relayed his orders. Lynx merged into the ground and quickly disappeared from the others. Follow me, Dog-san, Fu said, and the trio left, leaving behind the bodies of 98 dead Root Anbu. Hiruzen vs. Danzo. Hiruzen, it seems you've grown a backbone after all these years. I have to ask, what brought about this sudden change? Danzo spoke calmly. I changed when you ordered the Uchiha massacre despite my wishes. Now enough talk. Today I shall bring your life to an end. Hiruzen spat out before throwing 5 shurikens. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Instantly the 5 shurikens multiplied to 25 and flew towards Danzo. Fuden. Daitapa, wind release. Great breakthrough. Danzo released a current of wind that blasted the shurikens aside. Hiruzen, hoping to capitalize on the wind jutsu, released a fire jutsu. Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu, fire release. Dragon fire technique. The stream of fire grew in size due to the wind jutsu. Danzo was barely able to escape to his left, but the jutsu was able to burn the bandages on the right side of his face. There, in Danzo's right eye socket, was the Sharingan. Danzo, how do you have the Sharingan? The Sandaime asked before drawing his own conclusions. Who did you kill to steal that? Hiruzen was furious at how low his one-time teammate went in order to obtain power. I acquired this eye before the Uchiha massacre. It was from a powerful shinobi, too bad he escaped before I could take his other eye. Danzo informed nonchalantly. Hiruzen's eyes widened in realization. Shisui's body was never found when he had committed suicide. Danzo, you scum, what made you this power-hungry? The Hokage said in disgust. I thought you loved the leaf, yet you took an eye of one of our shinobi. Hiruzen was sickened by the man. Danzo laughed at Hiruzen. The laughter soon became maniacally before ceasing. I love Konohagakure, but I believe we belong at the top. Your pacifist ideals make the other hidden villages look at us as if we're weak. That's why I should be Hokage. Under my direction, Konoha would rise over those pathetic weaklings. Danzo replied. That doesn't justify your actions. We're Konoha shinobi who bear the will of fire. Our job is to mentor the next generation to someday replace ours, not for them to be used as mindless tools. The Hokage refuted. Hiruzen was beyond disgusting by this human, no this demon. Shinobis are tools that are meant to be used by their superiors. What's wrong with me using the tools to make me stronger? If I'm stronger then Konoha is stronger, it's as simple as that. Danzo said as if it was the most obvious thing. The conversation ended with that as both men went through hand seals. Danzo finished first and released his jutsu. Fuden. Shinkuaha, wind release. Vacuum wave. Danzo release arcs of cutting wind at Hiruzen's location. Hiruzen slammed his foot into the ground. Doden. Doryu Heki, earth release. Earth-style wall. A slab of rock rose in front of the Sandaime. The rock wall was overwhelmed by the wind attack and was sliced to pieces. This, however, gave Hiruzen enough time to dodge and slam his palm onto the ground. Kuchio's no Jutsu, summoning technique. Out of the smoke came Hiruzen's summon, King Enma. Not to be outdone, Danzo summoned his own summoning animal. A giant Baku rose from the smoke. Let's go Enma. Henge, Kongonyoi transformation, adamantine staff. King Enma changed into a black staff and was placed in Hiruzen's hands. Hiruzen charged and swung his staff at a variety of angles. Danzo was able to dodge due to the Sharingan's abilities. Eventually the Sandame's relentless assault was able to hit Danzo across the neck, making it snap. Danzo turned to smoke and was replaced by a piece of rock from Hiruzen's Doryu Heki. He used Kawarimi at the last possible second to replace himself with a rock. So that means he's currently behind me. The Hokage quickly thought. Danzo's summoning animal began sucking in the air. Hiruzen was placed between Danzo and his summon. Fuden. Shinku Renpa, wind release. Vacuum successive waves. Blades of wind were aimed at Hiruzen. Shit. The Hokage cursed at his predicament but was able to escape thanks to King Enma's quick thinking. The staff grew arms and threw Hiruzen's body into the air. Hiruzen then initiated his own attack. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Two solid clones appeared midair beside the caster. The first clone began his attack and was followed by the second. Sweden. Hahenryu water release. Tearing torrent. Raiden. Gion lightning release. False darkness. The first clone released a huge torrent of water from his mouth while the second fired a lightning bolt from his hand at the torrent. Danzo stopped his attack and tried to dodge when tree limbs restrained him. Mokuten. Mokusatsu Shibari no Jutsu, wood release, smothering binding technique. A voice came from underneath the ground. Unable to escape, Danzo met the attack head-on. The attack tore Danzo's body into shreds. The two Bunshins in Danzo's Baku puffed out of existence. Just as Hiruzen landed, a kunai pierced through his heart. There stood an exhausted Danzo, with his Sharingan eye turned white. Just as Danzo smiled at his victory over his rival, he was struck through the chest. A staff had gone through him and the Hiruzen in front of him turned to wood, revealing a Moku Bunshin wood clone. Kino. 1. Danzo thought as he remembered the former root operative. Hiruzen pulled out the staff and Danzo fell to the ground. His life flickered in his eyes as his body was too weak to move. There was no monologue or rant on being Hokage. His dream on making Konohagakure stand above the other villages was gone. His quest was ultimately ended by the same man who took the Hokage seat from him. His eyes closed and the life of Shinobi no Yami, the darkness of the shinobi, was over. However, unknown to everyone, Danzo gave Orochimaru an order using Koto Amatsukami, the Uchiha's strongest genjutsu. The order was to surgically implant Uchiha's eyes along with the Shodai's DNA into Danzo's right arm. But just as the deal was done, Orochimaru fled with the eyes while promising the surgery another time. It was thanks to Hiruzen's intervention that the surgery didn't take place. In the Sandame Hokage's pursuit to end his rival, he had unknowingly gave his former student more power. 1. Kino was Yamato's name when he was en route. Hiruzen sat in his chair and replayed what had happened in the past month. He was hospitalized for 1 week as a precaution for minor injuries and chakra exhaustion. The defeat of Danzo caused quite a few of events to occur. Danzo's body was burned after it was announced that he was a traitor. Most didn't believe that such an esteemed elder could be a traitor, but when evidence of him collaborating with Orochimaru came into light, there was no protest to the burning. Jiraiya was unable to track Orochimaru's slippery trail that seemed to disappear into thin air. Unable to find him in the darkness, the Toad Sage went back and reported to Hiruzen. The Hokage ordered a widespread search of possible tunnels or caves that could lead out of the village. The shinobi were able to find several deserted labs, but none of them led outside the village. Jiraiya then left the village, hoping that his spy network would aid him in finding where the snake hid. Danzo's route was secretly kept in operation, but this time under the guidance of Lynx or Tenzo, who was named route commander. All route shinobis that were loyal to Danzo was met with death for treason. The others surrendered and were admitted into T&I. Documents regarding Route's activities were collected for Hiruzen to review. It was amazing that Danzo had put his plans and dealings on paper. Some of the stuff the man had done was frightening. It clearly showed how much he strayed from the right path. His involvement with Hanzo the Salamander to quell Omegakure's rebellion forces, in hopes that Hanzo would help him invade Konohagakure so Danzo could be Hokage. He gathered young children to be put in his program. He would even kill the parents if the child had potential to be used as a weapon. Danzo even made children kill each other to get rid of their so-called useless emotions. He attempted to kill Shisui to steal his Sharingan, but he was only able to steal an eye before Shisui escaped. That explained the real reason why Shisui had committed suicide. In addition, there was a roster of every root Anbu. Even the ones that were killed were listed. Hiruzen checked the list and matched it with his own roster of shinobi. The Sandaime wanted to ensure that no Danzo loyal root Anbu was alive. He skipped the ones that were killed in action as they weren't necessary to check. Danzo's papers even revealed how the other elders and some civilian council members were persuaded to join his side. This caused Hiruzen to strip those council members of their seats on the council and placed in T&I for questioning. Kaharu and Homura were asked to retire because if the villagers knew that the three elders were involved in traitorous actions, the villagers wouldn't trust the higher-ups. The two ex-elders regretfully retired from their posts and Hiruzen was forced to select new elders. He decided on his two loyal students, Jiraiya and Tsunade. Jiraiya would only be available for council meetings if it was deemed important. Tsunade was chosen because Hiruzen wanted to groom her to be the next Hokage, not that she knew that. Although he didn't want to remain Hokage, he knew he had to teach Tsunade everything that was needed to become Hokage before he retired. The younger kids en route were taken into an orphanage and were adopted by the villagers. Two of the kids requested to live with each other instead of with a guardian. Hiruzen didn't like the idea of having kids live by themselves. He was going to dismiss the request when his surrogate grandson barged in. Flashback begins. Naruto had barged into the Hokage's office when he heard that the old man was hospitalized. "Gigi, are you okay?" Naruto asked, ignoring the fact that Hiruzen was with company. "As you can see, Naruto-kun, I'm in good health. I wished that you would have knocked because, as you can see, I have company," Hiruzen said while chuckling at his grandson's antics. Naruto looked at the two boys that looked around his age. The one that seemed older had blue hair while the younger one had black hair. Both boys seemed awfully pale. "Oh, sorry about that, Gigi, I was just worried about you." Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly in embarrassment. The blonde boy sat down on the couch so he wouldn't disturb the two guests while he waited. The two guests, seeing that Naruto wasn't leaving, continued the conversation with the Hokage. "Hokage-sama, can you please allow us to live together?" the blue-haired boy asked hopefully. "Sai is like a little brother to me and I don't want us to be separated if one of us gets adopted," the blue-haired boy explained. The black-haired boy named Sai nodded his head in agreement. Hiruzen sighed out loud. He honestly didn't want to separate the two boys, but living without an adult was hard for children that were still in the academy. "I'm sorry, Shin-kun, but it's difficult to live without a caretaker. Finding a place to rent you an apartment would also be quite difficult," the Sandaime informed. Before the blue-haired boy called Shin could respond, Naruto cut into the conversation. "Gigi, they could live in my building since no one else lives there besides me," the young Jinchuriki commented. The two boys looked at Naruto as if he was the savior to their problems. Naruto began pressing Hiruzen even more. "Plus, they'll have an orphan stipend until they graduate from the academy, which should be more than enough to live by. I really hope you don't separate family just because they don't have an adult to take care of them. Look at me, I've turned out just fine even with my circumstances." Naruto stressed the word circumstances, hoping to guilt-trip the old man. Naruto's plan worked as Hiruzen felt remorseful for not taking care of Naruto better. The Hokage took a puff from his pipe before blowing it out. Fine, you'll have your wish. The Sandaime said. The two boys looked at each other and smiled. But you'll need to pay rent and attend the academy to become a shinobi. Hiruzen smiled as he thought the conditions were too lenient, but he didn't feel like facing Naruto's wrath. Flashback ends. It was later reported that Shin had a life-threatening medical condition. Normal doctors were unable to pinpoint the reason for his disease and a way to cure it. Luckily, Tsunade wasn't a normal doctor and had seen such a disease in her travels. She was able to successfully cure him and he no longer had to worry about dying from the disease. The medic program that Hiruzen had installed at the hospital not only helped the academy students but the doctors as well. The doctors were better equipped to handle more difficult injuries and diseases, thanks to Tsunade's guidance. The students were taught different medical techniques like how to use a first aid kit. Simple things that could help a wounded shinobi were taught. Tsunade refused to teach medical ninjutsu to the students because it required good chakra control. She also believed that they needed to be at least genin for them to be worth her time. Hiruzen agreed as chakra control was something their Jonin sensei was supposed to teach them. Hiruzen spun his chair around to face the picture of Minato. I hope I'm doing you proud, Minato. I'm slowly but surely fixing my mistakes. Hopefully I can take care of my greatest mistake before I pass on. The evening sun shined on Hiruzen's rock face on the Hokage monument. Hiruzen smiled as if Minato had asked the heavens to give Hiruzen an answer. 2 years later, Naruto sat on the swing as he watched students walk out of the academy to their parents with their Hitai-8. Of course, Naruto didn't receive his Hitai-8 like the others. After all, he was taking the Genin exams next year. The blonde was actually waiting for Shin and Tenten to come out. Sai, wearing all black shinobi clothing, was sitting next to him on his own swing. He had gotten close to his neighbors and they were like a family. Shin was the oldest, Naruto in the middle, and Sai the youngest. When they had first met, Shin was like Naruto in some ways. Both were hyperactive and loud, but Shin was more absent-minded than Naruto was. Shin would sometimes stumble into things because he would be thinking about other stuff. Sai was the reserved one of the trio. He preferred to draw or read books. He and Naruto shared a common interest when it came to books. Sai was very impressionable, due to the fact that he would take anything a book would say as advice. He had once read a book on nicknames, which stated that giving people nicknames was a sign of friendship. That next day, Sai gave everyone in class a nickname based on their appearances and personality. Naruto had to stop Sai's frankness because he kept saying mean things unintentionally. The blonde had to give his younger brother a book on manners to stop him. Sai apologized, but the damage was already done. Now everyone saw Sasuke's hair as a duck's butt. Strangely enough, Sasuke's fan club seemed to increase after the incident. Sakura now took out her wrath out on Sai, instead of Naruto, after Sai had called her, Howler Monkey. Only Sai would dodge her attempts and the pinkett would hit whatever was near Sai instead. She was scolded by Iruka after she broke too many chairs. Naruto's affections for the pink-haired girl had decreased due to the fact that he was constantly training. Most of his time was used to hone his skills or to pull pranks. After a while, he no longer saw Sakura as anything more than a classmate. He attributed his liking of Sakura to the fact that he thought of Sasuke as a rival. The blonde still considered Sasuke as a rival, but he didn't vocally voice it. He tried to befriend the raven-haired boy like he promised Makoto. Despite multiple attempts to strike up a conversation, Sasuke would only reply with grunts. The Jinchuriki really wanted to be friends with the Uchiha since they both understood what it was like to lose a family. Makoto and Itachi were as much of a family for Naruto as they were for Sasuke. He eventually gave the raven-haired boy space after Sasuke said that he refused to associate with a loser like Naruto. While disheartened by the Uchiha's comment, Naruto didn't mind as he had a group of friends. Shikamaru would invite him, and by extension Shin and Sai, to dinner at Nara compound. Yoshino quickly warmed up to the two boys and constantly doted on them like she did with Naruto. At first, they loved the attention since neither had a mother. But before long they understood that Yoshino's affection was troublesome. Naruto was now able to beat Shikamaru in shogi but still lost 4 out of 5 times. Shin was too impatient for the game while Sai preferred to draw. The blonde felt confident enough to challenge Shikaku, only to be beaten to the ground in a few moves. The Nara heir smirked as he knew his dad was a difficult opponent. Ino and Choji would often come over to play as well. Choji was quick to open up to Shin and Sai after he saw that Shikamaru had done the same. Naruto's and Choji's eating contests were constantly going back and forth with the Akamichi currently in the lead. Naruto started to train with the big-boned boy at Shikamaru's request. The Nara heir figured that this generation of Ino Shika-cho would likely be placed on the same team. Shikamaru wanted the plump boy to get stronger so that he could do less work. The Jinchuriki knew that Shikamaru just wanted to make sure Choji could handle himself in a fight. Ino, on the other hand, didn't like Sai at all. After Sai had called her blonde howler monkey, she was displeased that she was compared to Sakura. The two girls would constantly fight or scream at Sai, much to the annoyance of the class. The pale boy ignored them while smirking, making Naruto swear his little brother was sadistic. Ino were on much friendlier terms with Naruto and Shin. She was still the co-president of the ever-growing Sasuke fan club though. Hinata had become more outgoing and she stuttered less. The Hyuga female started to gain confidence from sparring with Naruto. The blonde finally asked why she constantly stalked him every day. She fainted on the spot as Sai came to get Naruto for dinner. She was nicknamed Closet Pervert, courtesy of Sai after the event. Naruto, hoping to not hurt her feelings, told her they were just friends and that he didn't plan on being in a relationship anytime soon. Hinata was disheartened but settled with being a friend. The Hyuga heiress hoped to get stronger to impress both her father and Naruto. Kiba and Akamaru was a strange case of friendship for the blonde. Akamaru would actively greet Naruto and his friends and was rather close to Naruto. Kiba, on the other hand, refused to associate with Jinchuriki for some reason. He later found out from Ino that Kiba had a crush on Hinata but she only paid attention to Naruto. Kiba apparently wanted to be friends with Naruto but his pride got in the way most of the time. Shino was Naruto's best friend of the entire group. Although he was great friends with Shikamaru, the Aburame boy understood him better. They were both disliked by most of the populace because of what they carried. Naruto was scorned because of the Kyuubi while Shino was stared at with disgust because he carried Kikaichu in his body. The blonde would often visit the Aburame compound and was generally accepted by the clan. Naruto even met Shino's childhood friend Torun, who had recently came back from a long-term mission. Tenten was Naruto's best female friend. They constantly spar and train together. Naruto taught her Fuinjutsu to incorporate with her fighting style while Tenten worked with Naruto on his Kenjutsu. She quickly became friends with Yugao after she found that the Anbu woman also loved weapons, although it was only swords. Tenten was ecstatic to meet her idol, Tsunade, but was extremely disappointed when she met the drunkard. From that point on, Tenten only admired Tsunade's beauty and skills as a kunoichi. Naruto wanted to tell her about the Kyuubi but was afraid how she would react. She was his first true friend and he trusted Tenten. But unlike with Shino and Shikamaru, Tenten was directly affected by the actions of the Kyuubi. He didn't know until the brunette told him about her past. The Kyuubi had killed her parents, leaving her an orphan. Kaguya and Tara had adopted the girl afterwards. Naruto was scared that he would lose her when he revealed the truth. Meanwhile, Naruto's skills were progressing at a nice pace. He had finally succeeded in using the Bunshin no Jutsu after receiving Yugao's advice. He made 70 clones, instead of the required 3, and they didn't come out deformed. The blonde boy was able to use his other jutsus without hand signs after his older sister had pointed it out to him. Yugao told him about chakra memory, which was similar to muscle memory. After using one jutsu multiple times, the body was able to remember how much chakra was needed to activate the jutsu. Hand signs were a way to make the body learn the jutsu faster and to stabilize the jutsu. Generally only E and some D-ranked jutsu were used without hand signs since other jutsus packed more power. Naruto asked Yugao if it was possible to do one-handed signs. Yugao nodded but stated that one must possess amazing chakra control. If the person had lousy control, the jutsu would fail to appear. Naruto had then began working on the leaf concentration exercise to increase his chakra control. Initially he loathed doing leaf concentration since it reminded of him of the time that Iruka made him do it as punishment. Eventually, the blonde was able to hold 3 leaves on his body for 6 hours. To make the exercise more difficult, he would run while applying chakra to make the leaves stick to him. He had asked Hayate for a more advanced chakra control exercise, but his Kenjutsu sensei said that those exercises were only available to those who were genin and above. Hayate was cured of his coughing problem thanks to Tsunade's medical expertise. It was weird for a while for Naruto and other shinobi to not hear the man cough. Yugao became even more infatuated with his sensei and at one point, he didn't see them for an entire week. Naruto's training in Kgi Ryu was progressing thanks to the help of Hayate and Shizune. Shizune taught him human anatomy and where the pressure points were located. Using that knowledge, Hayate instructed Naruto on how to strike those areas. Thanks to his constant training, Naruto's physical abilities was now comparable to most of his classmates. He had now possessed high Chunin stamina. His strength was near the lower half of his classmates as his skill set didn't rely on strength. He wasn't exactly sure where he stacked up against his classmates since he never went all out. He did know that he was weaker than Shin and slightly stronger than Sai when going at full strength. The 3 boys often sparred without holding back. They told him about the old root program and Naruto remembered that he was also recruited by Danzo when he was younger. They were instructed by Hiruzen to not garner too much attention since their skills were that of a high genin. When Naruto was ready for level 3 in Fuinjutsu training, he sought out Jiraiya for training. The Hokage told him that the Toad Sage had left on an important mission. Naruto sighed and wished he had talked to Jiraiya earlier even if his godfather was a pervert and that left him for 8 years. After all, his father and mother made him his godfather. He must have been important to at least one of them. Naruto hoped that his Jonin sensei would be able to teach him taijutsu, maybe even genjutsu if his chakra control got better. Just as Naruto finished musing, Shin and Tenten walked out of the building. Shin was wearing all black Anbu clothing from top to bottom. Naruto had suggested outfit changes for both Sai and Shin but they refused. They were used to wearing Anbu clothing because of their time en route. Shin's Hitai-8 was wrapped tightly on his left bicep. Tenten wore a pink kipao blouse as her top and dark green pants as her bottom. Her Hitai-8 was tied to her forehead with the cloth being a darker shade of blue than her shinobi sandals. The quartet quickly left and went to Tenten's house for a celebration for the two new Konoha ninja. Tenten hoped she had a cool sensei and team. Naruto already knew that Shin enlisted in the new route program since he had many comrades there. The requirement for joining the route program was unknown since it technically didn't exist. Shin was allowed because he was a part of the old program. The new route ninjas were trained in espionage and were usually on missions outside the village. This allowed the Anbu to concentrate their forces inside the village. Route Anbu even served as backup members on difficult missions or when a squad requested reinforcements. The program was only known to Chunin level and higher shinobi. It was kept from public knowledge to ensure that there wouldn't be any backlash. Sai had wanted join at the same time as Shin, but the oldest brother urged him to spend more time with his friends. Sai nodded, promising to join after he graduated. Naruto preferred not to join because he wanted to be Hokage. Since Root mainly worked in the shadows, his mission records wouldn't be publicly known. There was no way the villagers would accept him as Hokage if they didn't know of his accomplishments. Plus he doubted that would enjoy staying away from the village, where most of his friends were. The families of the new graduates celebrated as their kids had joined the ranks of Konohagakure shinobi. In another year, Naruto would also be a genin. 10 months later, Naruto was jogging around the village in the early morning hours when he spotted two silhouettes from a distance. As he got closer, he saw two males walking on their hands. It was hard to miss them due to the fact their outfit was green spandex. The only redeeming feature of the outfit was the orange leg warmers, at least according to Naruto. Look, Lee, someone else is exercising on this youthful morning. The older man beamed to his disciple. Yosh, Guy-sensei. This person is worthy in becoming my rival. The younger version proclaimed to his sensei. Lee jumped from his position and landed in front of Naruto, stopping the blonde from moving forward. Hello, my name is Rock Lee, may I have your name? Lee asked while he held out his hand. Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you Lee, but I need to finish my jog. Naruto shook Lee's hand, hoping to flee from the green spandex boy. Lee's bushy eyebrows were sending chills down his spine. However, Guy stopped the blonde by placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Ah, you must be young Naruto, whom our Tenten talks about. It seems that you're a very hard worker just like she told us. Guy commented. Before Naruto said another word, Tenten came running up to the group. Guy-sensei, you're late for the team meeting, what are you doing? Tenten asked when she spotted Naruto. Naruto, what are you doing here? The brunette wondered. Naruto answered with his own question. These two are a part of your team, he said, pointing to Guy and Lee before continuing. I thought you said that your sensei and teammates were super cool. Guy and Lee smiled brightly, causing Naruto's eyes to flinch in pain. Did you hear that, Lee? Our youthful Tenten told her friend that we're cool. I'm one step closer to beating my rival Kakashi in coolness now. Guy shouted out. Hi Guy-sensei. I think that Tenten was embarrassed by our coolness, so she only told her friends. Lee added on. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. This image of two males in green spandex hugging each other with tears falling from their eyes was horrifying. Naruto had lucky closed his eyes because the sunset genjutsu soon came into effect. The early morning goers that saw the scene passed out with foam coming out of their mouth. Tenten simply cringed because she had seen the image many times, too many by her count. Naruto, I hope you understand why I lied to you, she whispered. Naruto nodded and placed a hand on her shoulder. His eyes were full of pity and sadness for his friend. Tenten, I'm sorry, I don't know how you can deal with them. Naruto replied, trying to console her while giving her a reassuring smile. Guy ended the genjutsu with Lee and turned to the Naruto. Young Naruto-kun, how would you like to train with us today? Guy asked the blonde. The Jinchuriki winced at the idea, not wanting to spend any more time with the spandex duo. Even though he's weird, Guy-sensei is the best taijutsu user in Konoha. Tenten told him. Sure. The blonde replied, changing his mind. I was hoping someone could help me with my taijutsu, as it's one of my weak areas. Naruto added. The quartet headed towards Training Ground 9 where a long black-haired boy stood. The training ground was like Training Ground 11, except that it had dummies and was littered with weapons. I keep telling Tenten to pick up her weapons after she's done with them, but she never listens. Naruto thought in his head. Guy-sensei, I wish you would inform me and Tenten if you're going to be late. The boy said to Guy, annoyance evident in his tone. Naruto noticed that the boy oddly resembled Hinata. Most likely a Hyuga, the boy wore a khaki shirt and dark brown shorts. Bandages were wrapped around his right arm and right leg. The blue shinobi sandals completed the outfit. That was unyouthful of me, Neji. I'll be here on time from now on. If I'm not, I'll run 1,000 laps around Konoha on my hands. Guy announced, much to the disdain of the people nearby. Anyways, are we going to train? Neji inquired. I have clan matters I must attend to. The black-haired boy said, even though he had no such thing. It was the only possible way to escape the spandex duo. He finally noticed the blonde standing next to Tenten. What's he doing here? Guy smiled at Neji's question. This here is Naruto-kun, a friend of Tenten's and an equally youthful person. Naruto-kun, this is my other student, Hyuga Neji. Guy introduced the two. Hello, my name's Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you. Naruto greeted. Neji frowned and had a look of distaste. I see. You're the boy that is friends with Hinata-sama. The Hyuga male remembered. Naruto smiled, but Neji continued. No wonder. Trash tends to stick together. After all, fate dictates that they'll never amount to anything. Neji said, causing Naruto to fume. Hey, I don't care what you call me, but don't call my friends trash. The Jinchuriki roared. I have every right to call you whatever I please. Fate separates the winners from the losers. You're fortunate that a talented kunoichi like Tenten is even friends with you. A loser can only lick the ground of where the winner stands. Neji finished his monologue. Tenten was furious at her teammate for downing her best friend. She was about to tell him off, but Lee intervened. Neji, in your eyes a loser will always be a loser, but with hard work anything can change. Lee advised. Neji smirked at the spandex boy. Lee, you were the dead last of our graduating class and you aren't able to mold chakra yet, you still persisted on being a shinobi. I'll admit that I no longer see you as trash, as your skills has grown since training with Guy-sensei. Neji admitted, causing Lee to smile at the acknowledgement. Neji would once again down his spirits. You're now the ground under my feet instead of the trash that rolls around. Naruto was mad. No, he was infuriated. Guy-sensei, can I spar with your student? The blonde requested as he desperately tried to control himself. Naruto's mind was raging to thrash the disgusting human being in front of him. Tenten put a hand on his shoulder. You might be good for an academy student, Naruto, but Neji was the rookie of the year. He's arguably the best of our generation. She warned. Naruto shrugged the hand off his shoulder and looked at Tenten, dead in the eye. Tenten, titles like Rookie of the Year don't matter out in the battlefield. I may be weak, but I'm not as weak as you think. The blonde refuted. Naruto turned away from her and stood opposite of Neji. Tenten was stunned by Naruto's words. She always sparred with him, so she knew how strong he was. Why didn't he understand that she was trying to protect him? Guy approached the two boys and stood in the middle. Naruto-kun, I thank you for being civilized and requesting a spar against my student instead of outright attacking him. Guy bowed in gratitude before standing back up. This is a spar, so there'll be no killing blows. The spar ends when I say so or when your opponent surrenders. Guy explained the rules of the spar. This is your last chance to surrender before I pummel you into the ground. Fate dictates that I'll emerge victorious. Neji smirked before getting into his Jukin stance. The Jinchuriki chose not to comment and simply looked at Neji impassively. The outgoing Naruto was replaced as his serious side kicked in. Naruto was analyzing the male Hyuga like a book, trying to find a weakness to exploit. After deciding on a plan of attack, he unsealed his wakizashi from its scroll. Lee waited with anticipation for the spar to start even though he was still feeling down from Neji's comments. Tenten sighed in defeat and just hoped the two wouldn't hurt each other too much. Guy raised his hand up and after a tense moment dropped it. Naruto versus Neji. Neji and Naruto both stood there, waiting for the other to attack. Neji was obviously not taking this seriously as he didn't even activate his Byakugan. Naruto decided to take the initiative and try to capitalize on the fact that he was being underestimated. Bushin no Jutsu. In an instant, hundreds of Narutos filled the training area. Such a useless technique when faced with Byakugan. Neji activated his Dujutsu and scanned the area. However, he was unable to find the real Naruto among the crowd. He ran away as soon as he had the chance. The Hyuga concluded. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of Neji, with his back to the Hyuga. The only person that saw what had happened was Guy. After making the numerous bunshins, Naruto used Kawarimi no Jutsu to replace himself with one of the abundant shuriken on the ground. The shuriken the blonde chose to replace himself with was more than 50 feet away. Guy concluded that Naruto had experience with fighting the Byakugan to know some of its limits. Naruto had then applied chakra to his feet and sprinted across to attack Neji. To knock Guy out of his thoughts, Naruto slid his wakizashi back into its sheath. Kgi Ryu. Makajuki, Shadow Quick Draw Style, Crescent Moon. The Jinchuriki whispered out. When the blade was fully in the sheath, blood sprayed all over Neji's back. A crescent strike was etched into his back and red liquid was dripping out of the wound. You shouldn't have underestimated me. If we were allowed killing blows, you would be dead right now. Naruto said with no outward emotion. Tenten had never seen her friend like this before. Every time they had sparred, there was always a smile on his face. Is this how strong he really is? Tenten thought while observing the spar. Neji panted before gathering his breath. So even a loser can injure me, I'll make sure you'll never hit me again. The Hyuga arrogantly commented even though his back was dripping blood. Naruto put his hand up to activate a seal. Neji saw this and noticed that there was a paper seal on his back thanks to Byakugan. Looks like you've noticed my seal on your back. Naruto said as he smiled at Neji. Too bad you noticed it too late. You lose, Neji. Naruto activated the seal and light surrounded Neji. The male Hyuga was blinded by the sudden light, forcing him to deactivate his Dujutsu. Kgi Ryu. Sabama no Mure, Shadow Quick Draw Style, Swarm of Swallows. Naruto rapidly slashed Neji's body countless of times. When the light dissipated, Naruto was slowly sheathing his blade while Neji stood there frozen. As soon as the wakizashi returned into its scabbard, red liquid splattered into the air. Naruto bent down to face Neji, who had fallen to the ground. This so-called trash just defeated you. If what you said was true, then what are you now that you lost to trash? Your so-called fate didn't help you win even though you said it would. You said that fate dictates life, then why not change it? You didn't try to change it because you're a coward. You took the coward's way out and wallowed in self-pity and arrogance. The blonde said. Naruto got up and apologized to Guy for hurting his student before leaving the training ground. Neji laid there with his face on the ground, thinking about Naruto's words. Guy sat down next to his defeated student. Neji, everyone here believed that you were strong, much stronger than Naruto-kun. Guy comforted the Hyuga. The only one who didn't believe that was Naruto-kun. He was able to beat you because you were arrogant and underestimated him. I hope you learned an important lesson today and think about the words that he told you. Guy said in a serious tone, unlike his usual exuberant self. Is it possible to change fate? He was obviously weaker than me, yet he was able to win. I may not know if fate could be changed, but I'll at least try from now on. Neji thought as he reached a self-realization. Hi Guy sensei. Neji said with a rare smile on his face. Yosh. I'll also make Naruto-kun my eternal rival. Lee shouted at the top of his lungs. The spandex duo then carried Neji to the hospital, but not before telling the stunned Tenten that she had the rest of the day off. Guy also told her to tell Naruto that he was welcome to join in their training. Tenten nodded before running off to catch up to her best friend. The weapon mistress didn't need to run far as Naruto soon came into view. Naruto, wait a minute. The brunette shouted as she grabbed Naruto by the arm, stopping him from going any farther. Naruto's eyebrows arched up in confusion. What's up, Tenten? Naruto asked his friend. What was all of that, Naruto? I've never seen you move like that before. Tenten asked, since every time they had sparred, Naruto never displayed such skills. Well, to be honest, I didn't want to attack the stick-up that Neji like that. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. He made me so mad for insulting my friends. I don't care if he talks about me, I'm used to it. But when he talks about my friends, it's a different story. So I wanted to pummel him and make him regret it. Those attacks are mainly used to severely injure or kill my opponent. I would never use it against you. The blonde admitted to his friend. Tenten sighed for the second time today and came up to Naruto. Why is he always so selfless? He never thinks about himself. It's an admirable trait, yet why does it feel so sad? Tenten thought as she wrapped her arms around Naruto. Naruto was surprised by the action, but he hugged her back. They stood there together for a brief moment until a booming voice rang throughout the village. Look, Guy sensei. I told you Tenten embraced your teachings of youth. Lee shouted from a hospital window. Yes. Guy replied. You're right, my student. Youthful Tenten is just too shy to show it. Guy then flashed a nice guy pose towards Tenten and Naruto. Lee followed the action and his teeth twinkled. The blonde and brunette blushed and quickly separated from each other. A nurse came by and told them to leave since they were disturbing the patients. Naruto and Tenten laughed as the nurse chased Guy and Lee with a clipboard, ready to strike. Graduation day, 2 months later. Naruto sat there anxiously as the rest of the class came into the room. Some were nervous while others just wanted to get the exams over with. Naruto waited his turn for the ninjutsu part of the exam. The boy answered enough questions on the written part to pass. He was able to pass the throwing test with ease. In the taijutsu portion, Mizuki went up against Naruto. The blonde was able to win using a style that Guy taught him. Guy taught Naruto as promised, and after seeing Naruto's horrible taijutsu, was motivated even further. The blonde's taijutsu was called Sufuto Sabama, Swift Swallow. It was an original style inspired by Naruto's Sabama no Mure attack. It was an evasive style that used Naruto's instincts and limber body to dodge attacks. The blonde would dodge or parry before attacking different areas of the body. The style fitted the Jinchuriki to the T since he knew the pressure points of the human body. It was thanks to Neji, however, that the style had come to form. After being discharged from the hospital, the Hyuga wasn't as pessimistic, nor did he belittle others like before. While he was still serious, Neji smiled more. When Guy asked Neji for advice, Naruto was sure that the Hyuga male would refuse since the Juken was a clan technique. Instead, Neji instructed the blonde on how the Juken worked, and in return, Naruto would spar with Neji. The Hyuga teen wanted to see how the Juken stacked against a style similar to it. Naruto constantly had his Tenketsu points closed since Neji never went easy. Eventually Naruto was able to parry Neji's attacks but still couldn't land a hit. The new style would take time to perfect since it was new. Neji acknowledged that Naruto might one day be an equal to him and Lee in taijutsu. When the blonde used the Sufuto Sabama against Mizuki, it was the first time that he had ever landed a hit. This resulted in him sending Mizuki to the floor in pain. Mizuki was escorted to the hospital as everyone looked on in shock. Sasuke was seething with jealousy and demanded Naruto to teach him that style. Naruto refused since it was his own and he wanted to perfect it before teaching anybody. Sasuke didn't say anything as Naruto didn't outright refuse or accept to teach him. The Uchiha simply grunted and went back to brooding. The ninjutsu portion was the last part and it went in alphabetical order. Naruto was among the last in the room before his name was called. Alright Naruto, I need you to do the 3 basic academy justice. Iruka said. The two were the only ones in the room since Naruto had sent Mizuki to the hospital. Naruto used Kawarimi with a chair in the room and used Henge to turn into Iruka. He finished off the test with 50 bunchins. Iruka was beyond happy and congratulated Naruto before grabbing a Hitai 8. Naruto, if you would let me, can I put your Hitai 8 on you? Iruka asked his now ex-student. Sure sensei, by all means. Naruto replied with a grin. Iruka bent down and replaced Naruto's googles with the Hitai 8. When he finished, small tears formed from his eyes. He hugged the boy tightly before releasing. I always believed that you could do it, I'm so proud of you. Iruka smiled as he wiped away the tears. Naruto, this time, embraced his teacher. Thank you for not hating me like everybody else, Iruka-sensei. I learned a lot from you, even though your lectures were boring. The blonde joked. The two shared a quick laugh and promised to meet at Ichiraku's another time. Naruto met up with his friends and they went to the Akamichis to celebrate their graduation. It was a festive day and around nighttime, Naruto left the compound to talk to the Sandame. He entered the room to find a limping Mizuki with a large scroll in his hands. Look at my luck. Just before I leave the village, I get to kill the demon brat. Mizuki grinned evilly while placing the forbidden scroll down. So you're a traitor, Mizuki-tem. I always thought your smiles were fake. Let me ask you a question before you die, who are you working for and why? Naruto asked but went into his taijutsu stance. Mizuki laughed hysterically at the boy. Who are you to ask me those questions? The traitor mocked. Since you're going to die anyway, I'll indulge in your last wish. I work for the great Orochimaru-sama and he promised me power to match even the cages. Mizuki confessed to Naruto. There's no way you could do this alone. You're too stupid for that, who's helping you? The blonde inquired, trying to goad Mizuki into revealing more information. I'm not stupid, you demon. The ex-teacher yelled. Wait, why are you so calm when I'm about to kill you? Mizuki's eyes narrowed in suspicion. Damn, I was hoping to get more information out of you. He's all yours, Anbu-san. The Jinchuriki called out. At Naruto's words, an Anbu appeared from the shadows and captured Mizuki with ninja wire. Mizuki didn't have time to react as the Hokage came into the room. Anbu, take the traitor to the T&I building and give me a report on all the findings. Hiruzen told the Anbu, who immediately left. The Sandame sat down in his chair and faced his surrogate grandson. Looks like you graduated, Naruto-kun. Congratulations on being a genin. The Hokage congratulated his newest genin. His face then warped into one of seriousness. Good job on getting Mizuki to reveal information, but how did you know there was an Anbu nearby? He asked Naruto. Naruto gave a wide grin. I just figured that there would be one nearby since an Anbu usually follows me around. Luckily I guessed right and Mizuki was apprehended without me lifting a finger. The blonde explained. Oh, I won't be committing any more pranks so you can tell them to stop tailing me. The new genin added. Hiruzen sweat dropped at the boy. Naruto had knew about the Anbu tailing him and the reason why they did. Ignoring that last sentence, you shouldn't have provoked an enemy shinobi. He warned. I'm pretty sure I could take on Mizuki, but I'll be more cautious next time. Naruto nodded and thanked his grandfather for the advice. Anyways Naruto, you'll receive partially pay for a B rank mission for your assistance in apprehending Mizuki. This won't go on your record as you're not officially a genin until you see your Jonin sensei. Hiruzen mixed some truth with the lies to prevent Naruto from knowing about the official genin test. Okay Gigi. I just stopped by to tell you I graduated, but I see that you're going to be busy, so I'll leave. Naruto said while saying his goodbyes to the Hokage. When Naruto left the room, an Anbu shunshin into the room. What's the status of Mizuki, dragon? Hiruzen asked the Anbu commander. Mizuki has revealed everything after he was interrogated by Ibiki. Inoichi mind walked into Mizuki to confirm that he's telling the truth. He has ties with a spy of Orochimaru, a genin named Yakushi Kabuto. Kabuto's currently working at the hospital. We've also found out a hideout that leads out of Konoha. Dragon finished his report. The Hokage recognized the name Kabuto and scanned Danzo's route roster. I want a team to capture Kabuto but proceed with caution. From Danzo's records, Kabuto was a former root Anbu, so he has at least Chunin skills. Take another team to investigate that hideout. The Hokage ordered. He had miscalculated, trusting in Danzo's papers. Hiruzen frowned that he allowed a mole to remain in Konoha. Dragon nodded and left to gather the teams. Hiruzen lit his pipe with a small fire jutsu. How did Kabuto infiltrate Konoha without anyone knowing? He even hid in broad daylight, yet no one suspected a thing. Is it possible that there's another traitor within our midst? The old man mused as he was left alone with a stack of paperwork. A week later at an unknown location. I've returned Orochimaru-sama. Mizuki was captured by Konohagakure. I was unable to assassinate him before he revealed your secrets. I wish for you to forgive me for this failure. Kabuto reported while bowing. His ash-gray hair was styled in a ponytail while the shinobi wore a high-collar purple shirt with matching pants. A flask was thrown across the room and impacted the wall next to Kabuto. I knew I should have killed that idiot when I had the chance. It'll be more difficult to infiltrate Konoha now that Sarutobi is on the lookout for us. Orochimaru raged and accidentally killed the specimen on the table. The Sanin's extremely pale skin glowed in the dark cave. The man's golden iris was able to strike fear in most beings. With purple markings around his eyes and fang-like teeth, it was appropriate to call him the Snake Sanin. Shit. I killed this fool. Orochimaru cursed, throwing the corpse to the side. This is unfortunate, but we'll need to push back our plans to invade Konoha. The invasion will happen sometime after the Chunin exam. Go and inform the Kazekage that the proposal is nulled because of complications. Also Kimimaro, I've a mission for you. Orochimaru barked out orders before turning to an equally pale-skinned male. 2 scarlet dots were marked on the male's forehead, proving him to be a member of the Kagaya clan. His white hair swooshed as he bent down to his knee. Is there anything I can do for you, Orochimaru-sama? Kimimaro asked his savior. I've heard of an interesting rumor out in Kusagakure. Apparently there's someone with abilities to heal people if bitten. I want you to find that person and bring them back here alive. They might be an interesting subject to test or a tool to heal my troops. Either way, take the Sound 5 with you and don't fail me, Kimimaro. The snake Sanin ordered Kimimaro. Of course, Orochimaru-sama, your wish is my command. Kimimaro said before walking off. Sarutobi-sensei, your beloved Konoha will fall to me, and on that day I will kill you, Kukuku. Orochimaru laughed as he looked at the jars that contained the Uchiha's eyes. At the same time in Konoha, the academy graduates waited patiently for Iruka to come and announce who would be their teammates. Unknown to them, the Hokage and several Jonins were watching them interact through a crystal. After a few short minutes, the Jonins backed up and waited for the Sandaime to speak. You can now make your requests, if you have any. Hiruzen told the soon-to-be senseis. 3 people raised their hands. Those Jonins were Sarutobi Asuma, Hitaki Kakashi, and Uehi Kurenai. I'll hear you out and decide whether to accept the request or not. The Hokage pointed to Kakashi first. I would like Uchiha Sasuke on my team, as I'm the only one capable of teaching him the Sharingan. Kakashi said with an eye smile. The former Anbu captain was once again late to the meeting, forcing everyone to wait for him. I would like to request Hyuga Hinata on my team for personal reasons, Hokage-sama. Kurenai, the newest Jonin, requested. I want this generation's Ino Shika Cho. Asuma smirked as he ran a hand through his spiky black hair. The Sandaime's son had just returned from his service as a member of the 12 Guardians Shinobi. His attire consisted of a standard blue Jonin outfit. The main difference was that he had on a white sash with the kanji, fire, written in red, tied to his waist. He had a goatee similar to his father. The younger Sarutobi was itching for a cigarette, but a quick glare from his former teammate, Kurenai, stopped him. Hiruzen pondered the requests for a moment. Kakashi's right, as he's the only one able to help Sasuke. I should put Naruto on that team and see if Kakashi recognizes his sensei's son. Kurenai could hopefully boost Hinata's confidence and train her to be a respectful kunoichi. Asuma, on the other hand, is just being lazy. He knows that it's tradition for a Sarutobi to be the sensei of each generation of Ino Shika Cho. The Sandaime mused. Hiruzen scribbled names on a paper, detailing the teams and sensei. He sent an Anbu to give the parchment to Iruka. He then gave all the Jonins a scroll with information on their team. All requests are approved and you'll meet with your teams now. You're all dismissed except for Kakashi. The Hokage announced. As the Jonins funneled out of his room, Hiruzen turned to perpetually late Jonin.